You ever wonder where Blastoise gets all the water for those huge bazookas on his back? I don't, because one fateful day in 2001, I found out and it changed my life. I was at my grandparents' house that day playing Pokémon Stadium 2 on a rented Nintendo 64 hooked up temporarily to their living room TV set. Not this one. You could rent entire consoles back then. For a fraction of the cost of buying, places like Blockbuster and Videotron would let you check one out for a few days, trusting you to return it later. That's how I was introduced to games, through brief, weekend-long access to rented consoles and cartridges, whittling away asynchronously at shared save files alongside the collective of whatever neighborhood kids lived near those same video stores.
This here is one such rental unit, which, according to the label on the box, my mom bought from Blockbuster on December 20th, 2001 for $64.99. A clever price, and a last-minute Christmas gift, I presume. Whenever new consoles released, stores would sell off their leftover last-gen rental stock, which is how I ended up with this one. My dad used to rent these a lot too, probably even this exact console a few times. It wasn't worth him buying one at full price since we'd only use it every second weekend. Renting was cost-effective and helped many a kid, including me, convince their parents to let them give video games a try. So before ending up in my closet and before my mom brought it to its forever home, this machine right here was one of a fleet of public Nintendo 64s that I was inducted into gaming by, with Pokémon Stadium 2 being a staple rental alongside it.
The fact that I didn't own most of my first games didn't bother me at the time, partly because, well, 3D graphics were sick as hell and left me barely any cognitive bandwidth to process much else. Seeing each of the 251 Pokémon rendered and animated in 3D was mind-boggling. But the other reason I wasn't fazed was because, well, I didn't actually know. I didn't realize that I was starting a lot of these games midway through on a shared save. And that's because, for longer than most kids, I was functionally illiterate. Let me explain. I could read and write, just not in the language Blockbuster's rental games came in, English. While I was born in Quebec, where French is primarily spoken on open air, I was raised by immigrant parents and step-parents who spoke exclusively English at home, their only common tongue. I grew up in a set of Anglo households, but formally I was more proficient as a francophone, because my school didn't teach English until grade 2. So, was I really illiterate? No, I could read and write in French, but I was functionally illiterate when it came to battling Pokémon because Blockbuster only had access to the North American English-only N64 cartridges. Fuck me, right?
As far as it matters for this story, I watched Pokémon the TV show in English because we subscribed to the national English cartoon channels at home. But other branches of the Pokémon multimedia mega property, often I consumed them in French. For instance, the official handbook that might adorn your own shelf, well, I had the French version, and it was fucking great. I think these days most other regions have settled on calling grass types plant instead, which makes way more sense. But back then, I guess it threw them for a loop. Bulbasaur and his buds are all classified as Pokémon des Champs, which are like Pokémon of the fields. What fields?
Anyway, let me reset the scene. It's 2001, I'm at my grandparents' house, and my dad's rented an N64 to simultaneously buy my love and fake status in front of his family. We on the same page? Cool. Beep boop boop, 911, shots fired.
My inability to read meant I needed help with text-rich games like Pokémon. How it worked was, I'd press a button, causing something to change on screen, I'd ask a literate family member to read the text for me, and with their guidance, I'd take action. That's how I navigated Stadium's wonky UI. I mean, despite being designed back in '99, before UX standards existed for RPGs, Pokémon was particularly awkward compared to its contemporaries. It forced you to make inputs invisibly, like straight up without any visual feedback whatsoever. This concession was designed for shared screen multiplayer, preventing players from seeing each other's move choices. You were meant to memorize each button's assignment and press them low-key to avoid revealing your hand. For some reason though, this weird-ass multiplayer mechanic carried over to single player.
So picture this. I'm sitting on the floor, my dad on the couch behind me. I'd ask him, what button is it to attack? He'd read the screen and tell me, and I would open up the attack menu. Then I'd ask him, what are my moves? Again, he'd read them off to me and tell me which directional button corresponded to each one. I would then rack my brain for context collected from Pokémon the TV show and finally make my choice. If any weird pop-ups like status effects or anything flashed up, I'd ask him to relay them to me too, but often they disappeared too quickly for him to catch. Overall, until I learned English, that's just kind of how it went. At least until one of us lost patience.
That day at my grandparents', I was fighting through what I now know was the Gym Leader Castle, a gauntlet of matches against all of the game's bosses. I had gotten to one of the later stage battles, hosted in a dark, gloomy arena. I was tearing shit apart with Blastoise. My older cousins were over, helping me navigate the UI to spam Hydro Pump, my dude's most powerful attack. Blast after blast, I was KOing these guys.
Hydro Pump! Bam! That worked perfectly! Oh! Knockout! Taken down with one hit!
Having now memorized the pattern of inputs for this unstoppable technique, I was shocked when my flow was suddenly interrupted by something unusual. After a series of uninhibited water blasts, the game no longer accepted my input. Instead, it presented a dialogue box.
It contained mysterious text that I'd never seen before, and it wouldn't let me proceed. Confused, I turned to my cousin and asked what I assumed was an innocent question. "Hey, Yuji, why isn't it letting me do Hydro Pump?" She raised a glance, squinted to read, and uttered an answer I will never forget.
It says there's no PP left for that move.
No PP left? I thought she was messing with me. My cousins were always fucking around, but no. She pointed to it, and I couldn't deny what I saw. I might have been incapable of reading the entire sentence, but I wasn't being fucked with. The screen legitimately said something about PP. I called my dad over to confirm, and he told me the same. I couldn't fire my water guns because there was no PP left? What the fuck? How do I get more PP? Is it just Blastoise, or does every Pokemon shoot their piss? Why didn't they cover this in the TV show?
My innocence shattered. The disbelief necessarily suspended to make Pokémon, a game technically about animals beating the shit out of each other, feel like it wasn't, was impossible to maintain anymore. I was faced with a cruel and dark reality that I couldn't unlearn. It'd be one thing to joke with your friends about how you bet Blastoise takes out his enemies with his fucking Hydro Piss, but here the game was literally saying so. This move I'd been tirelessly calling on him to perform again and again, that was him pissing? I might never again laugh as hard as I did that day. I got in trouble, sure, now that my dad thought that there was something inappropriate about the game, but it was worth it.
Years later, I finally learned the true meaning of that warning message. Pokemon moves were balanced by power points, PP for short, a resource which determined how many times an attack could be used per match. Powerful attacks like Blastoise's Hydro Pump had only 5 points, meaning you could use it just 5 times. Because I recognized it from the show and over-relied on the move, I burned through my points pretty quickly, and the game, in its effort to cram all its text onto a single line, abbreviated power points in the warning message, leading to a heroic misunderstanding that probably wouldn't have been nearly as funny if it hadn't happened on a water-type move.
But that day at my grandparents', no one present had enough of the picture to make sense of those 2 ominous letters. I knew the most about Pokemon, sure, but my knowledge was limited to inferences made between an English TV show and a French Pokédex book. I had no grasp of the game's actual mechanics. My family, on the other hand, could recite to me the words literally on screen with their English as a second language skills, but not interpret them. Even my cousins were too old for this Pokemon shit. They could tell me that next to the yellow arrow it said Hydro Pump, but not whatever the fuck that meant. And so I left that evening with a great misconception and an even greater schoolyard Pokemon rumor to start. Guys, Blastoise shoots his pee. It says so in the game.
Hydro Pump! Shit, that inflicted some damage.
Believe it or not, this wasn't even the worst way my brief and partial illiteracy sabotaged my moonlighting as a Pokemon trainer. While Blastoise and his piss cannons gave me something to laugh about for weeks, a far more consequential blunder would come to define my already cursed playthrough of Pokemon Crystal. A single misread prompt early in the game left me so lost and disoriented that I wandered the Johto region for 3 actual real-life years. My initial confusion stunted my progress, and in that pre-internet era, there was no easy way to diagnose the condition of my playthrough. No clues, no resolution, just aimless grinding. But to tell you that story, we're gonna have to go back. Back to fucking Brossard. the rest of this video is coming soon as I can finish it. I got a lot of shit in my real life to do though, so just fucking please bear with me. I also have to play the entirety of Pokemon Crystal and replicate a bunch of very complex events that even with, you know, tricks up my sleeve are going to be very complicated, but like I have to do that. So just fucking please have a little bit of patience. I'll be seeing you soon, and have a great time. Take it easy. Bye.